we're going to be doing an introduction to probability. An example of this would be flipping a coin, rolling a dice, or choosing a number. And all of these are called events. And these are just a few examples of different kinds of events. Now, outcomes would be, an example of this would be if you would flip a coin and you get heads or tails. Another outcome would be if you roll the dice, you'd roll a 6. If you choose a number, an outcome would be that you picked an even number. These might be possible outcomes, and there's hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of events and outcomes. Now, probability, when we talk about probability, is when we have a favorable outcome based on all of our total outcomes, or total possible outcomes. So for example, if we toss a coin, we could get heads and we could get tails. So if we roll, let's say, heads, we have a 1 out of 2 chance of getting heads or tails. Now let's just do a little number line here. And if we have, let's say, if the probability is 0, that's something that is impossible to do. Something that would be impossible would be to roll a coin and get a 7. That's impossible. And I'm going to mark this here, and then the other end of that, of course, the probability is something that's 100%, is something that is certain to happen. So if we roll a dice, we would for sure get a number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. If we tossed a coin, we would get either we would get heads or we would get tails. That would be 100% certain. Now, right in the middle, we have a probability is if something is likely to happen, it means it's like 50%. You have a 1/2 of a chance of, yes, the probability could happen, and half of it, you have another half of a probability of not happening. Now, if something takes place, if the probability is unlikely, that means that someplace between impossible 0 and 50%. Maybe even leaning more down towards more unlikely. So let's say, for example, if you rolled a dice and the chances of getting a 1. Well, you have a 1 out of 6 chance of getting a 1. So is it impossible? No. Unlikely? Yes, because it can only happen 1 out of 6 times. And this is a 17%, which tells you it's not a very good chance of it happening. And then we have up here, if we have something that probability is very likely to happen, we're talking about something that, is almost certain, but not quite. Let's say if you roll the dice and if you wanted to get a number that was like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, chances of that would be very likely. So you'd have a 5 out of 6 chance of rolling a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, or 5. And this is 83%, so again, that's a pretty high percentage, and so it's very likely that might happen. Now, sometimes when we talk about probability, we talk about something called a complementary event. And so let's write that down, complementary event. Now, a complementary event is an event that has nothing to do with the outcome. So, for example, if I have a spinner and I am going to divide my spinner into, let's say, 5 equal parts, just for an example here. And we're going to label those parts of the spinner A, B, C, D, and E. And if I said that I wanted to find out the probability of landing at a vowel. The probability of landing on a vowel would be I could get an A, I could land on a B, oh, excuse me, it's not a B, but an E. I could land on A or E. So I have a 2 out of 5 chance of landing on a vowel. Now the complement of that is landing on something other than a vowel. For example, like a B, a C, a D. So if I landed on a B, a C, or a D, those are ones that are not vowels, so they're called complements of what I'm really looking for. And so my complement would be like 3 out of 5. Now let's take and go through an example on, let's go to page 632. So go ahead and turn there, page 632. And let's go just to number 1 down at the bottom of the page. So on page 632, number 1, starting there, we have a spinner. We want to list all the favorable outcomes for the given event. So number 1, we're spinning a vowel on the spinner. Now the spinner looks like this, and it's divided into 6 sections, and we have an A, a C, a P, an E, an R, and an O. And so what are the favorable outcomes for landing on a vowel? Well, in this particular spinner, a vowel would be we'd have A, we'd have E, and we'd have O. So the chances of landing on A, E, or O are 3 out of the 6. We always want to simplify that, so it would be 1/2. So we have a 1 out of 2 chance of landing on a vowel. Now, of course, the complement of that would be not landing on a vowel, which would be, of course, half of it as well, so 1 out of 2. Let's go to number 2 example. Let's say we have a dice, and we want to know what the chances are of rolling an integer or a number on our number cube. Well, the chances of rolling an integer or a number, we could roll a 1, we could roll a 2, we could roll a 3, we could roll a 4, we could roll a 5, we could roll a 6. So it's pretty certain that we're going to roll an integer. And so the chances of rolling an integer are 6 out of 6, or 1 out of 1. So that would be our final answer. Number 3 example, let's say you're given a selection of marbles. Now we have 8 marbles here. I'll just draw this on here. You can follow along in your book as well. But we have a red, a red, a red, and a red. And this is green, and then blue, and blue. And so what would be the chance of randomly choosing a red marble? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 red marbles, and there's 8 marbles altogether. So the chances of landing on a red marble are 1 out of, if we divided this by 4, 1 out of 2 again, we have a 50-50 chance of pulling out a red marble. Now the rest of your assignment is going to be on page 633, and you're going to get that at school. So 633 is where assignment is, and you'll get that at school.